Some journeys begin with a plane ticket, others begin with a wound. Nadia's journey, however, began with both. The room was silent, not ordinary silence, not the kind of silence that comes with peace. This was the kind of silence that felt like something was already ended. Nadia sat at the edge of her bed and stared at the suitcases standing neatly by the wall, packed, closed, final. The room had once carried traces of her life, now felt strangely unfamiliar. The dresses that had once been thrown carelessly across chairs were gone. The cosmetics that had cluttered the vanity table were tucked away. Even the air itself felt different, as though the room already knew she was leaving before she had allowed herself to admit it. Everything around her looked settled, but inside her, nothing was settled, because no matter how carefully a person packs their belongings, there are some things no suitcase can carry. And no matter how far a woman travels, there are some places inside herself she cannot outrun. Her fingers rested lightly against the edge of the mattress, and without warning, her mind drifted back to where it all started. Back to the office, to the woman who had said the one thing no one had ever dared to say aloud, Linda. The therapist's office had always felt unnervingly calm. Soft cream walls, muted paintings, the scent of lavender, a room designed to feel safe. But to Nadia, safety had always felt suspicious. Linda sat across from her with the stillness of someone who understood that sometimes the most dangerous thing in a room was truth. And that day, Linda had looked at her quietly and said,
The first man in your life failed you. You didn't have a dad. You had a father.
Nadia had laughed then, a dry, defensive laugh, the kind people use when words hit too close. But Nadia had not smiled. The man whose responsibility it was to show you what love between a man and a woman should feel like, never did. Nadia remembered the way her chest had tightened, not because the words were cruel, but because they were accurate. The truth sometimes feel more violent than lies. Linda leaned forward slightly. People often underestimate the role of a father in a daughter's life, she said. But the presence of a dad, not just a father, shapes how a girl sees herself long before the world ever does. Nadia frowned and quietly said, What I had was a father, not a dad. For a moment, neither woman moved, and Linda nodded. Yes. And there is a difference, a very long one, she said. Any man can be a father. Biology can do that. But it takes character to be a dad. The words lingered even now. Sitting on that bed with packed luggage by the door, Nadia could still hear them. Because sometimes the words that haunt us the most are the ones that explain us. And then came a harder question. One Nadia had to ask with a voice she barely recognized as her own. If I wasn't responsible for my mother's death, she swallowed hard. If it wasn't my fault, her eyes had lifted towards Linda. Then why do I still feel guilty? Her voice cracked at the end of the question. Why do I still feel like I need a man to choose me before I can feel whole? I need someone to choose me. And for the first time, the powerful woman who negotiated billion-pound projects and commanded boardrooms full of men had sounded like a little girl. Linda's expression softened. She said, You're still searching for the voice you were supposed to hear as a child. Nadia didn't say anything, and so Linda continued. The voice that should have told you, you are safe, you're enough, you're worthy, you are loved. That voice never came. Nadia let the words settle, and Linda continued. But instead, Linda said, you learned guilt before you learned grace. That sentence had gone through Nadia like a glass, because deep down she knew it was true. And maybe that was the hardest part, not hearing the truth. Recognizing it, Nadia stood suddenly, pacing the room. Sharp heels against polished floors. Controlled breathing became less controlled. You say it like it's simple, she snapped. As though I can just wake up one morning and believe something different. She turned. How? How do I change what I believe? How do I undo the decades of damage? How do I fix something that became part of me before I even knew I existed? Linda stayed calm, steady, watching. And somehow that calm only made Nadia unravel faster. Because these answers are driving me insane, Nadia whispered. She pressed both hands against her head, and for the first time in years, she looked tired, not physically, so tired. The kind of tired that comes from surviving your life instead of living it. Then she looked at Linda, and the words came out softer this time. Please, tell me what to do. And that was the moment everything changed. Because Linda didn't give her comfort, she gave her confrontation. She stood up, walked across the room, took Nadia's trembling hands in hers, and asked her one simple question.
When you search inside you, who are you? I am an engineer.
Exactly, Linda's voice deepened. You're one of the most respected engineers in your field. Your work shapes skylines. Governments seek your expertise. Men who command nation lower their voice when you speak about your field. Nadia blinked, and Linda stepped closer. So why? Why would a woman like you hand over her worth to people who never built it? Well, that was the question. The one that stayed. The one that followed Nadia all the way home. The one that sat beside her now in the silence of her bedroom. And somewhere between fear and exhaustion, something inside her shifted. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough for her to realize this journey was not just about going home. It was about going back to the place where she first learned to disappear, and this time she intended to be seen. A knock on the door broke the silence.
Come in.
Kathleen's
Hey,
voice
food's ready.
floated
Come
in
eat.
gently.
Oh, perfect. I'm
Dinner's
starving. Great.
ready.
Let's go.
Nadia inhaled, stood, and walked towards what might be the last peaceful evening before everything changed. That night, the dining table was full. Seafood, spiced suya, steamed okra, sweet plantain, cold zobo. Kathleen outdid herself. Comfort disguised as food. Grace arrived shortly after, and for a little while the fear lifted from Nadia's shoulders until it was time to say goodbye. Grace held her hand. Call us when you land, okay? And be very careful. Kathleen embraced her tightly and then whispered into her ear, let them see who you have become. Let them see that you have become the best version of yourself with or without them. Nadia closed her eyes and whispered back, they will see. But even She did not yet understand how true those words would become, because in the next 48 hours she would be in Nigeria, and what seemed like a homecoming in real sense was uncertainty. Abuja welcomed her into luxury, one that, yes, she had in London, but she hadn't enjoyed in a long time. For the first time, Nadia allowed herself pleasure without apology. Massages, fine dining, quiet hotel morning, shopping with no permission. She sat alone in elegant restaurants and discovered that solitude did not always mean loneliness, and she needed that strength. Sometimes it meant freedom, and for 5 brief days she felt what peace might taste like. But peace was never meant to last, because on the fifth morning she checked out and began the drive to Eagle Kingdom, the place where she was born and the place she believes to be the root cause of all her problems. The road felt endless, every mile tightening something in her chest, every signpost dragging memory closer, until finally the car slowed and Nadia saw it, her home, except it no longer looked like her home. The roads were cracked, the buildings sagged, children with hollow eyes stood barefoot in the dust. The market was nearly empty. The air itself smelled of rot. What had once been a kingdom now looked like a graveyard. And in that moment, Nadia understood something terrifying. The place had not simply aged, it has decayed from the top down.
Why is this happening to the kingdom and its people? I am so worried for them.
Nadia remembered her childhood days when the grasses were so green and people played with peace and harmony, and women hawked their food peacefully to the marketplace. Everyone was happy and contented, and even with the little they had, there was peace and love. And now, the whole kingdom was the entire opposite of itself. The drainage smelled so bad, and she could barely breathe. She almost threw up, and then she asked her driver,
Why is this happening in this kingdom? It used to be so beautiful.
Madam, it seems you haven't been here in a while. A lot has changed and the governance is very bad and corrupt.
At the palace gates, the guards tried to stop her until she introduced herself.
I am Princess Nadia, the daughter of King Dennis Emochi, the first princess of this kingdom.
And suddenly, the gates, once closed to her, were opened. Inside, the king was in council, old, proud, wrapped in tradition, sitting on a throne built from power. King Dennis, her father. The room felt silent when Nadia walked in. Lilac silk, gold jewelry, steady eyes, unshaking posture. She said nothing, but the room felt her. And her father, the king, was upset at her silence. State your name. Who are you?
Who are you? We do not recognize you. Yes, identify yourself. Why have you interrupted?
Oh, you do not recognize me anymore.
Mother, I have returned.
It is her.
The queen! My daughter! No, it cannot be.
Her daughter's my spirit.
You are her image, my...
In that moment, the past came back for him, and for the first time in his life, the king looked afraid. He saw in her the spitting image of his late wife, and because he had forgotten this daughter of his, and she had finally come home. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, if you want to know what happened next after the return of Nadia, don't forget to subscribe to this video, like and share, and put your thoughts down in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you think. But overall, I'll see you in the next episode.